Thank you very much indeed, Professor Ansoumane, Douty, for this very comprehensive overview into a very complex issue of digital collaboration between China and Africa. Now, I open the floor for questions. Thanks also for joining us online. Feel free to drop your comments, questions in the chat room.
Thank you, and very insightful talk. My question relates to how maybe it's a call also for reflection, relates to this, touches a bit to what you were mentioning at the last point, like in the conclusion. We have the African Union, right? And then we have all the different African countries. And my question is, this cooperation, of course, we have one level at the African Union, but most of it, is it happening at the bilateral level with the different countries? The different laws of the different African countries, for example, on entry of investment, right? Are they in a way harmonized, or are they different? Are they contradictory? How does this, what implications does this great diversity have in having one voice, basically, in this cooperation, even if we are going to use the African Union as a platform? But if we have different legal systems and different policies that may not be aligned, how will this affect this cooperation?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's so many questions already. Let's start with the first one, right? So, if China way of approaching Africa, that has not started today, but the major platform is the FOCA. The FOCA named a forum for cooperation between China and Africa, where China usually define its visions and its strategy toward Africa. But the FOCA, it's not a decision-making forum. As I call it, is a declaratory forum, right? Where China make declarations on what he would like to do for Africa, right? And at the same time, I say there is no African policy toward China. And this, for the first time, I got that term from our common friends in 2008, Almeida, who was presenting on China policy to Africa and mentioned there's no African policy toward China, and which is correct. Africa in terms has a unity, right? There is none. But what do we have? Beside the FOCA, most of the work between China and Africa is through a bilateral agreement. So at bilateral level, and if you see, I'll show you the list of data centers that has been built. You see, it's not all African countries. A country that has a kind of very favorable relation with China and reflect China interest the most have a specific type of, right? China, for example, is present in Guinea in the mining sector, for example, right? So it's very specific, depending on the countries and the needs China wants to satisfy, define China's strategy toward different countries, right? So that's my first answer to your question. And what the African Union can do. Okay, this is not the first time in 2021 that China and the African Union has come up with MOU. I think even earlier than that, through the NEPAD, they have also involved in this project that's called the NEPAD project. But the recent one, to me, what triggered my interest is the fact that it's clearly stated that China and African Union working together, but China is aligning his digital Silk Road strategy toward the African Union strategy 2060. So there's already some alignment with what the 54 African countries agree with their continental digitalization strategy. Right. So that is already one platform beside the bilateral agreement or MOU signed. But I think the continental platform serve as representing the voice of what those African presidents agree in their declaration. So now we should see now in the long term how this is going to be implemented, because right now China is every place in Africa, depending on what they ask. Right? Most of the time, China make a list of projects that he's going to do. And that's why most of the criticisms say that those projects that are aligned to support the Chinese companies, right? Because China say, I would like to build 100 schools. I would like to export the 5G, implement the 5G, and so on and so forth. All those are decided by, but and then African countries that feel interested in specific project might request for a specific collaboration agreement for implementing in there, right? So I believe that's going to be, well, it's in the best interest of China, because if Africa speak one voice against China, probably if it's not favorable, it's not good, right? So like when you talk about European Union, take the case of European Union. European Union has a one voice. When they speak the voice, right? But right now, African Union is an intercontinental organization, meaning that as intercontinental organization, it does not take any norm that apply or binding for the countries of the 54 countries, like European Union, which is a supranational organization with which has a capacity to take norms that implement to all the country. So the case of African Union, it can serve as a voice, but it doesn't, whether it represents all the 54, that's a question, because each of them can on their own negotiate with China on specific issue of national interest. Yeah.
Yeah, please, Emil.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. It was a very interesting lecture. Just wanted to add on to what Professor Angelo has said, was that in terms of Africa, I think because it involves 54 countries, it is actually not in the interest of China's side to actually have one specific approach, because it encompasses so much diversity.
Yes.
Within this continent, and each area, be it north, south, east, west, might have a different status of development, different need, and also different implication in terms of their one thing I mentioned is their school needs and also their financial needs. My question to you is that because of these differences, do you feel there will be a larger and larger digital divide that will come, as you said before, or will there be a catching up and equalization of the playing field?
Okay. Equalizations, maybe it's ultimate goal, which will take a time, of course. But what I'm trying to show you through the example is the progress that is being made now. And first, that's why I put in my slide, digital foundations. The foundation of any digitalizations is about infrastructures that support everything, right? So now what China involvement has been in this field is to create that infrastructure connection within and outside the continent. That is the first thing, this is as an approach. Now, you say there is, of course, divide. If you take the northern part of Africa, it's not the same. That's why if I gave you the data, I mentioned sub-Saharan Africa, which is considered to be at the most disadvantaged positions in this kind of digital. Because even just take the access of electricity in Morocco and Egypt is completely beyond what's the average in the context of sub-Saharan Africa. Those are more far away developed in terms of internet accessibility, electricity, and so on and so forth. So, but only the sub-Saharan part is facing that difficulty. I believe in one thing, government role, it's very important. I think China, it's a facilitator, like any others partners, be it France, Germany, United States, they are facilitators. They facilitate, right? But one of the most important actors are the governments, right? And of course, different needs, different interests, right? The interest of Senegal is different from the interest of Guinea-Conakry. And precisely when we have leaders, political leaders, that focus more on re-elections than support, providing a proper development support, right? So in that sense, there will never be a balance in terms of digitalization if the process is not locally owned and nurtured. If we just rely on what China brings, China has a capacity. Any other partner have a capacity, even though now we see some joint project between China and, for example, let's say for linking Cameroon to Fortaleza in Brazil, it's done in collaboration between Huawei and Emirates company that are doing this kind of connection. So there is a lot of partnership coming because China alone cannot do all. So much more partnership is taking place, but also United States, France are also there present. But I believe those are facilitators. It depends on the African government to really decide where they want to be. Some countries start having national strategy for digitalizations because that's very important as a guiding process, right? National strategy for digitalization. But not all countries in Africa have strategy for digitalization. Then those working with China, for example, those who have strategy know what to tell China they want. But those who don't have national strategy for digitalization, they go accept what China give, right? Whether this push them to be at the same level, that is a question to be more elaborated and discussed.
Now we have a question from online from Anna Kele. Thank you very much for your very useful presentation. You have informed us that the internet users in Africa are 25%. So what are their preference in the use of internet? No, e-learning, learning, private connections, and what are the main products traded in the e-commerce?
Okay, you have informed us that internet users in 25. Not 25. I say the move from 25 to 38 now. So what are the preference in the use of internet? E-commerce, learning, private connections. Okay, that is an interesting question. But again, it's very difficult for me to talk about 1.3 billion people preferences in the use of internet, right? And I think people have a different purpose in using internet. Some for educational purpose. I gave you example just now with the DigiSchool and for the DigiTrunk, for example, where those internets are used for educational purpose, right? And because of the level of development in Africa, people don't have the same need for the usage of internet. Some that are more advanced know that they have access to mobile. Places that are high mobile penetration, for example, are able to use mobile payment mechanism, right? Because it become a tool for them to do that one, right? Places that are very well developed, where people has not much concern, want to stay on internet for private reason, and so on and so forth. So it's really difficult to say exactly what could be the preference, because we are talking about here 1.3 million people in Africa. where people, depending where they are located, rural, urban area, northern part, southern part of Africa, it's all depends. The diversity in the usage of informations or internet might depend on locations, on the level of development, and more specifically on their urgent needs. So I don't know if, Anna, this helped you.
Shall we also come back to this crucial question of the digital gap?
Yeah.
Because even we face this problem in China, you have the growing digital gap between rural zones and the cities.
That has been reduced, huh?
Is
tremendously reduced.
Still there.
Yeah.
But my question is from the perspective of universities, like a university, what we have, Christian universities, we want to contribute to bridge the gap or to reach out to the poorer areas. So what is also as an educator your recommendation? What can we do to kind of bridge this gap
in the context of
education?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, well, where we are, precisely in Macau, I've been for 17 years now. I believe we don't have that gap issue. It's used. But if I need to bring you back to what I'm talking about, Africa, for example, one of the way to bridge that gap in the education sectors is, again, first, it's depend on national strategy for education. And I can tell you the example of Guinea-Conakry. Now, several measures have been taken by the Ministry of Education to digitalize many higher educations, but also schools, right? So it's about national engagement or commitment for that, right? So individuals or even partners, what they can do, they facilitate, they provide a support. Huawei has been under this kind of, because it's been participating in what you call Global Alliance in Education with the UNESCO. So push Huawei because it's part of that Global Alliance. So Huawei has been doing a lot to build, for example, this Digi School or Digi Truck, for example. This is all to facilitate, to reduce the gap, because the Digi School is my kids of 7 years know much internet, how to use iPad. I learned from him some of the time how to do some of the things on internet, right? But the same age back to Africa don't have the same knowledge. And of course, we know today with the in this era of artificial intelligence, as we were mentioning earlier, it's important to have, because research proves how much it can facilitate learning, but also it can put the learning in danger, right? Depend how you use it, right? So, but it's you cannot use those new technology for learning purpose if you are completely left out in the mainstream in terms of access, right? So for me, my message on this part is first effort need to be done at any level. It's a governmental strategy. Huawei, China are facilitators. They come and give you what they want. If you then tell them what you want, they tell you what they have. So it's up to you whether what they have match what you need or not, right? And most of the criticism today against China is that I believe it's because of the lack of proper national strategy telling China, this is what we want, take or leave, but this is what we want. Without that one, China give what China has.
Please,
okay.
Father Yaroslav, yeah.
I have a little bit technical question.
Oops, I'm not technician. Okay.
I would be interested to know a little bit more about these alternative forms of communication, because you mainly mentioned the cable under the sea, right, for the internet connection. Nowadays, we have a lot of, let's say, Starlinks, satellite connections. Yeah. So is there any African country that put on the orbits any satellite or is using other companies to use it? Or, for example, Huawei for the purpose of their use of technology. I think they should use some kind of, not only rely on cable connection, but also satellite connection. But this is just a simple technical one. The second question would be related to what you did not mention in your presentation, or at least I did not hear that. something that is at the center of now the economic strategy for the future, namely nanotechnology and the rare earth minerals. That is said, many diagnoses speculate that actually the question of nanotechnology will be the war about who controls rare earth minerals. And we know that China controls 97% of this. So this, when I read it some time ago, it was quite shocking information. And then now, very tense relationship between United States and China. We know the context, right?
Yeah.
So my question is whether where would you put this question of rare minerals, earth minerals, in the context of overall China strategy for Africa? Is it a kind of hidden form of neocolonialism, as some would accuse, or any other intuition you would have about this?
Okay. So, two technical questions. The first one, this is some of the infrastructure that China has been supporting. The satellite tracking ground stations has been, So Namibia, for example, one of the projects of Huawei in Namibia on setting up the satellite tracking ground. I had so many information I wanted to put, but I have 1 hour. I needed to be very selective, right? So that's why I decided to. But this is one of the examples of what China has been doing in this regard. Now, coming back to your second questions, which is more geopolitical questions, and it's not only referring to China and Africa, but it's involved other stakeholders like United States, France, and so on and so forth. So China has been, of course, the rare earth China has been chasing that resource because first it's rare, right? But beside that is that the fact that I can give an example, most of the Chinese presence in Congo, for example, right? It's basically for this the extraction of those rare earths that are used for mobiles and so on and so forth. But the same question we would ask before about the competition between US, the race to the bottom between US and China for other resources in Africa, can be extended to the same with this nanotechnology or competition over the rare earth. Now, who can win? I can tell you, right? How it's going to end. I cannot tell you how it's going to end, but I know the difference is that China presence in Africa, which I know one of the countries that produce rare earth is Congo, right? So, but I think in some of the Asian countries also, I believe they have. But China presence in Congo, it's deeply rooted, right? But you see recently with the war going on in Congo, where America is trying to take his part, lion's share. You see, following the negotiation between the government and the rebel group, where the deal is to guarantee peace, United States need to have also access to some of the natural resources. Again, that could be at the advantage of the United States in this battle of rare earth. Simply why? Because China, as we all know, is using non-interference policy. So China will not interfere. Backdoor negotiation probably, but China will not interfere and beat the table to say this is I want it to be done. But you see, recently the minister of the Secretary of State, which is the Foreign Affairs, make a clear announcement that the rebels are breaking the agreement and United States is going to respond, right? So this is one way for me where United States is trying now to also participate, take its part in this geopolitical or war for rare earth in the case of Africa, mainly in the case of Congo. Now, the future will tell us how probably it could be, but I know it's a race to the bottom. Because it's important for the technology, right? So. I don't know if I answer your technical question. Okay.
Could we follow up on the bloody side of what we just touched? These very bloody wars, Congo and also Sudan, where sometimes we wonder, is sometimes little information about it. Could you have any suggestion how this digital collaboration between China and Africa could also be kind of a peace fulfilling role?
Well, you know, digital cooperation is business. As I mentioned, partly because first, the funding mechanism, it's funded by those banks, but also for the benefit of Chinese firms. Even though we have some externality where African countries also benefiting through those connections, right? Business is afraid of war, right? They say investment don't like noise, right? So whether, because there are two things we can see here, whether because of China interest in those countries that are going through a war, it's so important that they might have a huge impact on Chinese investment. Probably it could be, if that's the case, there's more possibility for China to interfere, backdoor, or whatever mean, right? But if not, I believe, as we have seen in many wars going on in Africa, where China just made the declarations. And usually declarations is to cease the war and stop the war, right? Compared to other Western countries where sometimes they might decide to have a military interventions or take huge sanctions, right? But the context of, for example, Congo, as you know, it's very complex because Congo has a very weak military infrastructures, and military in general has the resources for war, right? The way this rebel enter into Congo till where they are today, it shows how much the system is weak. Even though the idea is that you have a Rwanda behind it, but Rwanda always denied being behind all those mercenaries that are trying to take the power, right? So, but so far, I haven't seen anything from China, but I have seen more from the United States raising voice, intervening. China has been limiting itself for making declarations, which fully align with China philosophy or ideology of non-interference. So I do not interfere into internal affairs, right? So I don't see in the near future what digital collaboration or cooperation could be a tool. Probably foreign aid, China foreign aid could be a tool probably to reinforce some capacities, right? But digital cooperations is more focused on really business, connecting people, creating them opportunity, right? Bridging the gap between those and those who do not have, right? So that's my opinion on it.
Okay, I think we really are extremely grateful to you, Ansoumane, for this really fascinating tour de force, I would say, into this complex issue. And personally, also, I feel in kind of that you confirm the outcome of my research on China and Africa, how many opportunities we have out of these collaborations. So thank you very much for sharing this wisdom with us. Any last message you want to convey? So also as a challenge on the people, also thanks for all those who join online.
Well, after all the question, I think I have sent all my message through my answers. But yeah, thanks to the audience that joined us tonight and made this session very interesting through questions, but also those online. Very happy to see them online. I believe they come from different place. I believe this is open discussions, and it can be a follow-up in different avenue or platform for conversations and discussions. Again, thank you very much for inviting me. I have been telling my colleagues that every time I try to run away from China, Africa research, I say, Father Roflen, bring me back. So it's a pleasure to always talk about this topic. And yes, looking forward to share other experience next time. As I told you, I'm working on cross-border data transfer between China and African country. I believe maybe the next talk we can share more on that, which is also part of the technology, right? So digitalization, because most of those data center I mentioned now are a part of this process of cross-border data transfer, because some country require what you call data localizations. You need to have infrastructures there to maintain the data. So I believe in the near future, we have more time to discuss on that topic. Until then, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much.